Welcome to Rock That Relationship, a podcast about all things relationship with Corey and Tracy.
Now let's get real and start creating relationships that rock.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rock That Relationship. Tracy and I are here today to actually talk about differences in upbringing and parental relationships. And we're so excited because we have such a neat opportunity today, something that we don't normally get. We have some folks that we met through a Facebook site called Club Lilies, and Club Lilies is, we've also have an episode with Jamie from Club Lilies in this season to make sure that you check out. But anyways, we were able to connect with Nic and Heidi, who are in a relationship together, and they are going to talk with us about their relationship dynamics and differences in their own upbringing and parental relationships. Both Nic and Heidi are small business owners. They're burgeoning podcast creators that we're just talking about launching into the podcast world themselves. But we're really fortunate to have them here today to talk about some dynamics in their own relationship that I think is going to be really helpful as we kind of look at this season with differences in partners in our romantic and intimate relations. So Nic, Heidi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, maybe we could start by sharing, having you both share a little bit about yourselves, maybe thinking a little bit about your childhood. Give us some context, where you grew up, when you grew up, were you close to your parents or immediate family members, anything that you think is kind of significant about your upbringing that shaped who you are and how you show up today.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start. I'm a little bit more chatty than she is. She's a bit more nervous.
And you are, I just said for our listeners, so you're Nic.
Yeah, I'm Nic.
Okay.
So you're actually sitting in my childhood home with me. So this is where I grew up. I now live in my childhood home. So for all intents and purposes, it seems like I have a really good relationship with my parents because they gifted me this house. I paid a little bit of rent, but I grew up here. I was born in the late 80s. We've lived here my entire life. I did a stint in the military where I went out west for a number of years, but this is home and it's always been home. And I moved back here in 2013 and I've been here ever since.
And where's here? Sorry. Are you on the East Coast somewhere?
So I am in a very, very small northwestern Pennsylvania town. My neighbors are Amish right across the street. They're Amish.
Oh, wow.
So that is, in terms of rural, it's very rural. My town has 580 people in it, and I graduated with like 42 kids. So that was my graduating class and my experience living here. And it's still that small. My daughter goes to the school here. Her graduating class is 22.
Wow. She goes to your same school. So like does she have to like live up to the expectations of the teachers that were there? Like when your mom was here.
So there's not many of them left. So almost everybody that I had has since moved on or retired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lucky for your daughter. I'm sure you're like big shoes to fill, right?
Not really.
Yeah, Corey, that's a lot to assume. She could be the bad girl of town and they might be like, thank God you're not like your mother.
I always assume the best in people.
Yeah, you sure do. You sure do.
No,
it's Northwest Pennsylvania. Yes. Amish country.
Amish country, yes. So it's about halfway between Pittsburgh and Erie. So those are the two big cities that I'm sandwiched in the middle of here.
So kind of conservative probably, right?
Ooh, big time. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating. And Heidi, do you live there also, or have you been there for a while?
No, so I live about an hour south from here.
Directly south, yeah.
Yes, that's it. I live in the same area that I kind of grew up in, but it's near Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. I assume that's more liberal, right? Because I'm a total West Coast, or like Mountain West Coast person. Is that Pittsburgh's pretty big, right?
It is, yes. So I'm enough outside of Pittsburgh that it is still a very conservative area. can't really get away from that. I think the closer to the city you get, the better it is. But
outside of Allegheny County, it's red.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Gotcha.
And just for our listeners' sake, you're both use she, her pronouns. So I assume you're both cisgendered women, and you're you didn't meet through, we met you through Club Lilies, which is later in life lesbian. So you're in a lesbian relationship and you're living in this kind of conservative rural area.
Yeah.
Do you live near your parents? I mean, since both of you are living where you grew up, or your family members living nearby?
Yep. My parents live less than 5 minutes down the road from me.
Wow.
Mine are about 15 minutes from me, but still pretty close.
Okay, and so growing up, now, Nic, your parents were hippie-ish, but have changed?
Yes. So, my dad was a steel worker, union guy. My mom stayed at home mostly, so she did have odd jobs here and there. She cleaned houses, her own little house cleaning business for extra money, fun money is what she called it when we were growing up. They both voted staunchly Democratic. All I heard growing up was how dumb the Conservative Party is from them. And, there was definitely racist tones from both of my parents, but that's the conservative area that we grew up in, the generation that they are. Both my parents are boomers. My dad was born in 58. My mom was born in 60. So I am a older millennial, but definitely raised by those boomer parents. My brother is in his 40s, so there's some age gapping between my siblings and myself. My brother's almost 50, I'm almost 40, and then I have a younger sister who's in her early 30s. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So, but you said you were in a conservative area, but your parents were Democrats. Were they more like the union Democrats, I'm assuming, versus the
blue collar Democrats? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like the union, even her dad, Heidi's dad was also, he was probably union, right?
Yes,
he was a bridge workers union, probably. Yeah.
Yep, carpenters union.
But Heidi, your parents were more conservative growing up. Is that right?
Very much so. Yes. Very involved in the church, and that was their life. That was their friends. It still is. But I think they're lightening up a little bit.
So your parents both have come flip-flopped a little. Like Heidi's parents have become more accepting and liberal, and your parents have gone from being Union Democrats to something quite different, right?
Yes. Yeah. In a sad way. It almost is, it's sad to talk about how much my parents have changed for what feels like the worst in my opinion as their child. It feels worse than it was growing up. Yeah.
And towards you, like their attitude towards you, and now being in a same-sex relationship, that's gotten.
That was probably the worst thing that I could have ever done to them, according to them. So.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow. So what do you think? Was it your coming out, or were there other factors that led them to sort of start leaning more right?
Oh gosh, no. They just found out in February. They just confirmed. Heidi and I have been together over a year now, and they confirmed this past February their suspicions, right? And they were it was such a hard evening. My dad had been saying some racist things all day, and I had to keep telling him to stop doing that because I had my daughter with me, and she was wondering why my dad was saying and doing the things that he was doing. And so I finally had to tell him to stop, and he just blew up on me. And then he said the reason why he was so mad was because he knew I was gay. So he was acting that way because he was so upset and didn't know what to do with his anger. So, and this was when we visited. My parents are snowbirds. They go down to Alabama, Gulf Shores, Alabama in the wintertime. So I took time off work. We flew down there. I took my daughter out of school so we could have some time with my parents. And that's when all of that took place this past February. And I haven't spoke to them since. We have not had any contact or communication ever since then.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I am too.
Okay.
So that was a conversation with your dad. How about your mom? Was she privy
My
to
mom
that?
Yeah, she was there. She was witnessing it. And I don't quite know, she didn't quite know what to do with the situation. She was trying to diffuse it. She was trying to get us to calm down. She was trying to get us to apologize to each other. But I was like, this isn't something that gets apologized for. Like, there's nothing to apologize for here other than maybe screaming in my face. But this isn't something that I can't take it back. I can't do anything with it. And then I was just told that I was a disgusting, mentally ill stain on America. That's the last words I heard from my dad.
Well, I hope you knew that's not true. And that's just this is some kind of mental illness that I think of these people have who hate other people for no reason,
Right. Yeah. So
it's really sad and unfortunate.
My sister and I have had lengthy conversations about my parents and like what has happened. And it's really been just in the last decade that all of this has been going down. Like, they definitely got sucked into the alt-right, the brainwashing, the news media, all of that. Like, there's not, they're too far gone at this point. Like, I don't know a path to get them out of where they are currently residing.
And, sorry, this may seem like a dumb question, but just, you said it obviously makes you sad, right? Sad to talk about. Like, how does that make you feel as a person, as a child of someone who says that kind of stuff?
It's definitely difficult. It was harder to hear it from my dad. My mom has always been more critical of me, not necessarily mean or condescending in the ways that she's doing it now, but definitely more critical. The expectations were higher. Like, I definitely walked on more eggshells around my mom. Her emotions were a little bit more volatile. She's a little bit more in that narcissistic realm, not necessarily narcissistic, but definitely she has more needs, and you had to tiptoe a lot more around her growing up. And my dad was my buddy, so that was harder to take. If it would have come out of my mom, I probably would have been okay. I was expecting it out of my mom. I was not expecting it out of my dad. So that's where my confusion, like the first, election with Trump back in 2016, he was wearing a Trump hat. I thought he was doing it as like a form of irony or humor. That was our same kind of humor. So I really thought that he was running a bit, because we've run bits like that since I was a little kid. So I thought he was being funny about it, and it turns out that he was not. And it took me a long time to realize that he wasn't kidding. Like, he was more serious.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Now you mentioned your sister. I mean, how is your relationship with your sister? And have you come out to her as well? And is she supportive? And
she's known that I've been on the gay spectrum for forever. So since we were a lot younger. So she's pretty accepting of it. It's hard for her because she's the baby. So I have an older brother, then myself, then my little sister. So she definitely wants to continue the relationship with our parents and does things to kind of keep that alive. And she's like, sometimes you just got to smile and nod or just not say anything. And I'm like, but at this point now, like I could still not say anything, and they just treat myself and Heidi like dirt. Like, I brought Heidi around and they pretend that she doesn't even exist. Like, she's been in their house and they ignore her. They don't even talk to her.
And does that create tension for the two of you? Like, Heidi, how do you feel? Are you just like a supporter of Nic, or are you like, screw these people? Or are you like, I don't want to be brought around that, like, it's really hard, right?
Yeah. Yes. The times that I was around them, it was before we were really ready to be open and out with each other. We were kind of still keeping things on the down low, right? So they just thought I was her friend, and I didn't really think much of it. Like, they weren't mean to me, but like, they were just kind of talking amongst themselves. I'm more quiet. I prefer to just kind of sit in the background and watch. And when I don't know people, that's just kind of how I roll. So I didn't really note that they were type of way, right? Nic was the one who recognized that they didn't treat me like they treat her other friends. And I had no idea, nothing to compare that to. So I didn't note that. And I've not seen them since this all went down. I wasn't there for this. I stayed behind. And I've not seen them since, but I definitely feel a type of way now. I really have no desire to see them because I don't like how they treat the Nick. Like that to me is awful, and I don't understand. Yeah. So they're just not people I need to worry about at this point, and it's a shame though.
Yeah.
They're lost.
What about, like that's got to be a lot of stress on your dynamic in general. I mean, particularly Nick, knowing that like you're in this either it's I guess permanent or hopefully temporary stage or whatever's happening with your parents, where it's got to be taking a toll on you, and and then Heidi being there. What is that like for you, like post that event? Like, do you talk about this at all? Do you just sort of say, fine, are my parents, boom, I don't want to talk about it? I mean, how does this come up in your relationship now? This, because it is floating over you as sort of an unknown cloud, and it's got to be really difficult.
Well, I think initially we were trying to be super respectful. Like she said, we were trying, like we were dating. I had been engaged, and that was kind of on its way out when she and I met. Like that's not like the intent of the relationship at the time. And then it sort of went that way. Like the engagement ended, and then very quickly it was like we were a thing. And I just like, because we were being so cautious and really trying to like not shove like my daughter's face in it, her kids, she's got 3 kids. So we were really trying to attempt to like do this right? Make sure that we actually liked each other before we looped anybody in on it. Make sure that this was going to be a thing, that this was a good fit, that we were happy, that this wasn't just a rebound, that, we were really trying to be cautious. So I just think that because of that, and when things blew up, I called her while I was down there and told her, I was like, if my parents know, your parents know, and they're okay with it. Like, I just knew that when you tell your parents, they're going to be so much more accepting than mine are. Because I really thought that mine were in the dark, and they noted like social media postings. And we thought we had been so careful with our social media postings that we had done. We thought like, it looked like she and I were friends. And I'm just assuming that it's because of the way she looks, right? Like she's much more masculine presenting. And so I think that is why people had the assumptions that they did. Cause I was standing no differently with her than I do with any of my other like girlfriends that I have, like any of my other female friends. There was nothing different about the activities that she and I were doing together versus my best friend, Carolyn. But my parents felt a type of way about me hanging out with Heidi. Clearly, because that's what they were noting. So that's when I told her, I was like, if my parents know, your parents know, and yours are okay with it. So, cause she's had many more interactions with her parents.
Well, you guys were both with men before, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Corey doesn't like it when I say anything about people's age, but I cannot believe either of you have children already, because I would have thought you were not old enough to have children. Okay. What? Okay. Well, I must be very old. And I would say that Heidi looks like an adorable baby dyke. And if I saw her with you, I would just make the assumption that you're together. So I wouldn't be surprised that your parents were doing the same thing. I mean,
I'm always surprised that people realize I'm gay. It's a running joke between us. She's like, nobody knows though, right? And I'm like, Heidi,
right? Yes. You're an adorable baby dyke, and now I find out you have older children, so that just blows my mind. So,
my oldest is 15.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
We have 15 to 11. There's 4 children.
Wow.
15, 12, 11.
And so you thought, okay, well, our parents don't really know, and you're trying to make sure that you guys this is what you both want to do before you go public, really. Yeah. But Heidi, your parents were conservative and now they're accepting. Do they know now?
They do. So I came out 5 years ago and left my marriage. I didn't tell my parents. My ex-husband did, against my wishes. It ended up, long story short, that worked out because my dad knew for a few months before I knew that he knew, right? So when I found out that he knew and hadn't disowned me, I actually just cried and couldn't believe it. That was like, I was convinced when my parents found out why I was divorcing him that they would have disowned me. So I had one conversation with my dad about it 5 years ago. And he said, well, love, what's the word?
Hate the sin, love the
Hate
sinner.
the
Love
sin.
the sin, hate the, yeah, whatever that
Hate
is.
the sinner. No, love the sinner, hate the sin.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Dad, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that because I don't think that is how that works. So we might just not be able to talk about this topic again. And we never did. I then later found out that my mom had found out the reason why of the divorce, but her and I had never spoken about it. They had met past girlfriends of mine, but I always said they were my friend. I even had one that lived with me and we did the baby. She had a child and I helped her raise that child for a year. And I still just told my parents she was a friend. So I think they kind of knew that that's not the case, but we had agreed not to talk about it. So I never really had my own coming out to my parents. It took me deciding that Nic was important and special enough that I wanted to share her with my parents, and I wanted to officially come out to my parents and tell them who Nic was to me.
And how do they treat her now?
They love her.
Oh. How did that go when you introduced them? Like, what'd you say? Like, ta-da! Like,
So I'm very shy and have a hard time with confrontation and hard conversations. So I do better with text. So I typed out a really long text to my dad and said, Dad, I know we've agreed not to talk about this, but here's where I'm at. I've met somebody and this is so special and important. I want you guys to meet her and I want to tell the truth about who she is. She is not just my friend. Calling her my friend just doesn't feel right anymore. And I need to be honest with you. And his response was, I had a feeling. I've seen how happy you've been. I would love to meet her. And I was like,
awesome.
wow.
So this was a week before Easter, this past Easter, and my religious family, obviously Easter is a big deal. So they have a family dinner and everything. And she was invited to Easter dinner.
Wow.
So that was the first time she got to meet them. And my dad very much, I feel like, was just asking you
I'm
questions.
on a first name basis with Mike now. We are friends.
Yep.
So
Nice.
Very, very intrigued by her. My dad is very much more accepting of it. My mom, I could tell she had some hesitancy, but she was still very kind and nice. My mom is a little bit socially awkward. So I could see why she was behaving the way she was. She was trying, right? I recognize that she was trying. But since then, Nic has been around them a couple times since then, and they very much include her as part of my family and say Nic and Remy are invited. Remy is Nic's daughter. And so.
Is there any tension then between the two of you? Like, oh, my parents are this way and your parents are that way? Or do you feel, Nic, like, okay, you've lost one set of parents and got another set? Yeah, gained another set. Or
a little bit. So I think just like her dad is so similar to my dad that's why I was like, oh, please let him be okay with this so that we can at least have one dad. And I mean, we have Jim, her ex-husband. I call him my ex-husband in-law. So like, that's her, like Jim's great. We love him.
He's
and
like
so,
my best guy friend still. Yeah. We co-parent so well together. Like it works. So we loop him into a lot of things too. Is it like when I had a leak at my house for something and we're panicking, he came over at 7 a.m. to try to help us figure it out. And
so did Mike. So did my dad.
Yep.
So yeah, like it's nice knowing that there are still people who care. And like, I'm a massage therapist. That's my business. That's what I do for a living. And I've had so many of my massage clients, male and female, let me know that like, well, if you ever need a mom or if you ever need a dad, like you can always just call. Like, I have a client who's an older gentleman. He's always like, well, if you need any help with anything, you just let me know and I'll come over and help. So I have plenty of stand-in parents to help with stuff that crops up.
That's great.
Not sufficient. So
yeah. We don't need it.
So like with these stand-in folks and stuff, do they all know that you're gay as well, or however you identify, lesbian or whatever? They're supportive of that. And
so far, the only problems that anybody has actually verbally expressed, or even like physically, like you know how you can read an energy in a room. The only people who have had a problem with this situation are my parents. So the rest of my family has been accepting. My siblings are accepting. My cousins are accepting. I have a very large family, and we all live in this teeny tiny little town and its surrounding areas. And a lot of my other family members own businesses, and the brewery in our town is owned by my cousin. And so everybody, with the exception of my parents, are accepting. And we recently, within the last couple of months, one of my cousins ran into us and felt the need to like let us know, like, hey, we don't share the same views as your parents. We love you. You guys are amazing. You're always welcome around us. Like, you know, we just want to make sure that you know that like we love you no matter what. And like we are not your parents. Like they made a huge point to like make that known. So that was really nice.
And I don't know if this will help you or not, but I mean, I came out in like the early 90s, you know, and I knew I was gay in the 80s, but out of self-survival, I didn't say anything when I was, you know, in high school to my parents. So I waited until college, and then I really didn't speak to them for 4 or 5 years because their attitude was so abhorrent, and it wasn't even religious based, and they were total like, you know, Union Democrats, and they freaked about it. And then they gradually accepted. And so I really applaud you for standing your ground that you don't need to have people in your life treating you like crap, right?
Right.
And maybe down the line they'll change, but it looks to me like, you know, you're not bitter that Heidi's family is more accepting, and that you're allowing all this love into your life. And then if those parents want to come back at some point, that is their choice, but you don't need to put up with that crap in the meantime. So good for you.
Thank you. Yeah. I keep saying I left the ball in their court. Like I just set it down and they can pick it up whenever they're ready. But like, it's not going to be me. I have nothing to apologize for. I don't have any more things to say to them. I'm the exact same person that I was before they knew that I was gay. And like, I don't know. They were like, oh, well, we didn't know. Like, and I'm like, well, now you do know. So why are you mad? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what difference does it make? I've been gay the whole time. So.
Right.
Yeah. Like,
it doesn't matter who you're with, right? As long as that person is loving and kind, it shouldn't matter to a parent. But
everyone wants you to feel loved and be loved.
How much differently I'm being treated by Heidi than I have ever been treated by anybody I've been with in the past. Like everyone recognizes that. Like like her friends see her happiness. My friends see my happiness. And like, it's just like, there's so much love happening that it's hard to like remember that my parents hate me. Like, it's like, it just seems so weird. It's such an outlier moment for them to be in their anger over something that is just happiness and love.
Well, and you may find that, I mean, this has happened with lots of people where, especially big families who live close by, is the other family members are like, what is going on with you? Why aren't you getting on board with this? This is like 2024 and this is your daughter. And not to shame them or pressure them, but really just kind of educate them and bring them just up to speed. Like that their ideas are really out of the mainstream. And sometimes it takes that, just waiting, sometimes hoping that happens, you know, to smooth it over, but it's not on you. And I mean, that's the hard part about all this is, you know, the coming out is we often feel like we have to justify or defend who we are, even though that's who we've always been. We're just telling people now. And or that we have to be this like educator and we have to make sure that other people are okay with our coming out. And I'm like, why? I found myself doing that when I came out. It was like, oh, this is really difficult for you. And then I slip into like counseling mode. Like, let me make sure this is okay for you. What on earth? This is my identity. You need to be making sure I'm okay. And that's a really tough thing to do. But if you have other people behind the scenes, like other family members, you know, particularly your siblings, it might just be like, what is going on here? You know?
Yeah, but maybe they will shame these people. Or maybe these people should feel the shame that they should feel for disowning their own child over something so minor. You know,
I mean, it could be shame, but I mean more like education, you know, or bring, you know.
But maybe not. Maybe somebody will shame these people, and frankly, that's what we need more of. And
we need more shaming, public shaming. All right, bring your parents on Zoom right now.
You sent me that article the other day about that. Once we lose that shame for our abhorrent behavior, but you know, good for you guys, like for not letting that tear you apart. or let you say, I'm not going to be with this person who treats me so well and loves me because of these other people's belief. Even though those people, you know, brought you into this world, they don't have the right to tear you down when you're here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think my little sister has been trying in her own way to like get my parents to see the other side of it. Like my mom has just said, well, I just don't want it shoved down my throat. And she was like, well, how are they shoving it down your throat? I don't understand.
Right.
Like, what do you mean? What has she done? And my mom will say like, oh, well, they're just always posting on social media about doing stuff together. And my sister's like, Mike and I, because her boyfriend's name is Mike. And she's like, well, Mike and I post photos that they're no different than the photos that they're posting.
Right.
Are you grossed out by mine and Mike's pictures? Like, do you feel like I'm shoving my straight relationship down your throat? And my mom has no like comeback or response to that,
right.
because it's just all nonsense. It's all like words that they're confused. They didn't see it coming. It's something they don't understand. So instead of saying, I don't understand, this is new to me, I need a minute, they're just responding with anger. And like, it's just an emotionally unintelligent response, which is kind of what I expected. So it wasn't surprising. It was just how angry my dad was the more shocking part. I was expecting shock, confusion, questions. I was not expecting anger and disgust.
Now, do you all have, like, I know you said, Heidi, you were married before and you have three kids and you co-parent very well. Nic, what is your backstory with anything? And I'm asking too, because sometimes the parents create a relationship with that person and they also don't want you to divorce them. And so there's that extra pressure of now I'm losing my son-in-law or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's just an extra unnecessary, but extra layer. So Nic, what is your backstory? Were your parents close with whoever you were with, whatever men you were with before, the parent of your daughter?
The only man that I've ever dated that my parents were close with, particularly my dad, was my ex-husband, but he was extremely abusive, financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, like all of the abuses. And I left him in 2013 and moved back here. So, well, he was technically supposed to come here and then he decided not to come here and we didn't hear from him for like a year. So that's when I kind of figured that was over.
Wow. How did your parents react to that? Did they know about the abuse? Did they know about that relationship? And
yeah, he threw me over the back of a couch and I hit a coffee table when I had just found out I was pregnant with our daughter Remy. Just shortly before our wedding, and I wanted to come home. I wanted to call the wedding off. I didn't want to get married to him because it just kept happening. And my mom said, well, we already bought our plane tickets, so you need to figure it out.
Wow.
oh my gosh.
There's a lot going on there.
There's so much going on. The paradox of this, right?
So,
like, you know,
but it's amazing that you're not taking it on yourself. I mean, maybe you do, and maybe you two work it out together, but you seem to not be taking on those people's troubled ways of looking at the world, right? So for a parent to say that to a child, like, oh, we bought our plane tickets, who cares that this person's abusive? Like, you know, you don't seem to be absorbing that. Because I can imagine that would be you might have issues about her being close with her ex-husband. She might have issues about you having this past abusive husband and now these, you know, pretty abusive parents, right?
Mm-hmm. I just feel bad for all of them. Like, it's not even like, I'm not even mad. Like, I'm sad for them that's where they exist. Like, how stressful of a headspace do you live in that's where your anger goes, that you're choosing to be mad about something so simple.
And then missing out on their daughter and granddaughter's lives. Like,
yeah. Like, it just seems silly. Like, I'm just sad for them. Like, I don't really hold anger. Like, my emotions through the whole thing has just been like sadness and disappointment and not anger. Like, why
well,
would
you're entitled to have anger too. And if you're in therapy, hopefully your therapist tells you that.
Yeah, I think
you know,
the anger happened many, 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 many moons ago. Like, I mourned the loss of my parents years and years and years ago because they're simply not the same people that raised me. So like I even told them that in February when all of this kind of hit the fan, was that like the parents I knew that I grew up with died several years ago. So this set of parents that I currently have they're not the same people.
Oh my goodness. What about your daughter? Does she ever say like why she doesn't see her grandparents anymore? Does she know what's going on or?
Yeah. So she was there. And my mom still messages her. My mom saw her twice, has seen her twice since February. So I've never forbid them from seeing Remy. I'm kind of letting Remy lead that. Like if she wants to go spend time with them, I'm not saying no. She can go spend time with them. That's totally fine. Like her relationship with them is separate from mine. And that's what I told her. Like, like I'm upset with Mimi and Pap. But if you're not upset with Mimi and Pap, you can go see Mimi and Pap. Like that's completely and entirely up to you. And how much time you want to spend with them is also up to you. But like, I'm not going to be spending any time with them until they're willing to have an open and honest conversation about my life. That's just where I've put that little boundary line down.
They don't seem to be putting in a whole lot of effort to try to see Remy, though.
Not
and
really.
Remy doesn't seem too bothered by it either.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting thing to note.
Yeah.
So can you guys talk about that together with each other? Like, does it bug you? I once stormed off when my ex-wife said something about my grandmother because my grandmother did something terrible. And then I was like, you can't say that to my grandma, right? Even though I knew that my grandma did something awful, right? So like, can you guys actually, can Heidi stick up for you? Or are you like, hey, back off. This is my family. And look at you. You're so lucky. You know what I mean? You've got the nice family. Does that create tension?
I kept my mouth shut for a while and would just be a listener and let her vent, let her say things. Cause that's how I would be too. I can say what I want about my people, but if somebody else says it, I have a harder time hearing it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I just assumed that's how everybody was. So I was very careful to say, I never really said anything bad. I just was a listener. Right. Until recently when she found out her mom was saying something that was not true about her to other people in the town. That was when I got real fired up and did a little bit of hating per se on her mom. Mm-hmm. And your reaction was actually quite positively funny. And I was taken aback. I was like, so I'm sorry if I went too far. And she was like, no, I actually liked that. I think you enjoyed that. I felt like I stood up for you. Yeah. And I validated you by.
I was like, I wasn't even mad. And she got all fired up.
I was more mad about it. Yes. So it didn't seem like that caused tension, but I still normally am very careful not to say anything bad about, because at the end of the day, they're still her parents. There's still love for them in some capacity. And I don't want to take away from that. And so I try to stay out of it, but just be supportive of her and listen when she needs to vent or talk about it.
And it is okay to be a protector, and it's okay to have a protector. And I do think that domestic violence victims don't often accept that. It's very hard to accept that. And it's hard. That creates a lot of, like, I've had people been more upset for me about the treatment that I've received from certain family members, and yeah, you've known them your whole life. So you're like, well, there's this or that. And they're like, well, fuck that. Sorry.
Tracy, we've gone over
I did it. But it's very hard. It's really hard, like, because these people, but it's always Toey. It's always just, you don't necessarily want them out of your life forever. Other people can see, that yes, this is not good. I can see how it could create a lot of and then hard for you to go and spend holidays always at Heidi's place, and you don't have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's before Heidi, I was spending holidays at my best friend's places. So this is not, my mom told me that I deserved a sexual assault on my birthday a few years ago. So
wow.
I had the audacity to join the military, so I had to have just expected that. And she wasn't sure why I was so mad.
So your parents have really gone down some rabbit hole.
Wow.
Makes
you wonder what that moment of just turning, I mean, are are they highly like religious or have a cultural background or a familial
My parents
background?
are like anti-religious. At least they were when I was growing up, and suddenly they're not. You know what I mean? Like my mom grew up religious. My dad did not. My mom refused to baptize me and my siblings when we were little because she wanted us to decide that for our own selves. And she did not like that she was forced into that when she was a kid. And like, she's made multiple comments over the years about like, oh my gosh, my mother would be rolling in her grave over the fact that I didn't baptize you, that you guys weren't involved in the church and things like that. So they made a conscious decision to not be involved in those sorts of things. And like, my mom was my softball coach all growing up, and like my dad worked on the road, so my mom was a single mom during those years. So I have a lot of like respect and admiration for all the stuff. She's a breast cancer survivor, and she got that when she was 36. So like I'm older than she was when she was going through that now, and I can't imagine doing all of what she was doing at that time. Right. So I have a ton of respect, and it just feels like it goes on deaf ears sometimes. Like I can say those things to her face and it just doesn't register, you know, because I'm mad at her now, you know. So she's very much like those like current feelings, is there's no getting over how she feels currently.
But you're putting up your boundaries and you're saying, you know, no, you don't have the right to say that stuff to me. And I do have a right to be upset about this horrible things that have happened, you know? Yeah.
This is the longest that I have, like, this is not the first time that I have set a boundary and not spoken to my parents. Like there have been other times throughout my life, the sexual assault evening being one of those. And this is the longest, this is the most firm that I have been. And like, it's because I'm supported this time. Like Heidi's been very supportive in me, like not reaching out, like past partners, men, because that's all I've dated before her, would encourage me to like, just apologize, you know, just get back in with them. Like, just do it for Remy. And now I'm like seeing like, well, it's why would I do that? Like for Remy, like I'm doing this for Remy currently, right? I'm setting this boundary and putting this lineup for my daughter and myself. So this is just like, this is the first time that I feel very, very supported, and like, this is what has been needed for a really long time, is just really firmly saying no to both.
Well, I commend you for that, because it takes a lot of strength to do that. I'm wondering, you know, Heidi, from your perspective, do you ever feel like sometimes you might withhold a little bit about maybe a closeness that you have with your family because you don't want it, I don't know, to land funny? Like, I know I was very, very close to my family. My coming out was incredibly easy. And particularly, I'm 50 years old, and to come out as easily as I did in the time that I came out was not the norm. And so I've been sort of a little reluctant with friends to say, you know, like my mother was my best friend and my biggest supporter. But most of my friends, they don't have very good relationships with their parents. So I just sort of am a little bit quieter about it because I don't want to make people feel bad. Do you ever feel that kind of compulsion to do that? Or do you feel like the more you share about that, the more you're bringing Nic into your whole fold?
That's a good question. I don't think I've really thought about it. The times where I've shared like positive, good things, like the times where my dad would say like, oh, what are you guys doing? You guys are all invited over. I want to tell her, is a way, I don't know. I have wondered if that made her feel a type of way, but based off of her reaction, when I do tell her those things, it doesn't seem like that makes her feel bad. So I continue to do that as a way to maybe give hope that like, okay, I did not think my parents would be here. Let's give your parents some time.
Did you guys work with a therapist at all to come to such maturity, or is this just natural for you both?
We're just old.
Yeah, old. We're just old, young. We're just old, young people with really old teens. But like, you just been around the block a few times. Like, have you guys done individual therapy yourselves, or have you?
I've done that
kind of
many years, but I've not in about a year. I kind of had a bad run of some therapists, so I'm currently running around here untherapized, but
you've done it in the past, and I mean, you both are very mature. I mean, you really, you know, this could totally have blown up and gone an entirely different way, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we've both even noted that like, this is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. And she has noted a similar sentiment that this is just like things that probably would have gone sideways with other people just have barely been a blip on the radar screen in this relationship. So things that would have normally derailed other ones have not even registered for us.
That's awesome. So then I guess my question is for you then, Nic, how does it feel when Heidi brings up positive things that are happening with her family? Does that make you feel more inspired or included, or does that make you sort of feel a little sad inside that you don't have that with your family right now?
When all the things blew up back in February, I was like, the sadness was the reason that the light bulb went off, that I was like, oh my God, her parents love her. Right? Like that was my first thing. That's what I wanted to tell her. I wanted to come home. I wanted to be done down there. And like, that's one of the first things out of my mouth through tears, through heaving, was, your parents love you.
And I was like, how do you know that they know? Like, I was so confused. I'm like, what do my parents know and they still love me?
And
like,
I was just so excited for her that she wasn't going to have to do this, right? This hurt that I was currently experiencing. Only one of us was going to have to go through that. And I was glad that it was me, right? Because she had been fearing it. I didn't have a fear over how my parents were going to react. I wasn't expecting their reaction, and it was super painful and really bad, but she was more scared than I was. And so I was so relieved to find out how my parents knew that we were together. And then I knew her dad only has like 10 friends on Facebook. So there isn't a single way that he wasn't seeing what we were posting and putting all the pieces together the same way that my parents were. So that's why I was like, your parents know, and they still love you.
And even though I had come out and they knew, my thought process was, okay, they're probably okay with me being gay as long as I'm single, because that's how going person mind works. I'm sinning, but I wasn't partaking in that sin. So I was afraid, being honest and saying, I've been dating, here's my person, that would then be the moment that they were like, okay, now we're done with you because now you're living in sin, right? So I was thinking I was pulling one over on them and that they really had no idea that I've been dating. But they did know, and they don't hate.
Did you confirm it with them? Did you say, did you know because of social media? I mean, you said your ex-husband said something, but did they pick up on social media too?
I'm not really sure. I think my dad, they never really said how my dad knew. Like my dad, he never really said.
They were just waiting for you to confirm it. That's just what it felt like, is that they were just waiting for her to be like, yep, and here's my person.
Yeah, they were letting me lead the way with that. So they would never ask any questions. They just took my word for my word. But I think they knew deep down, but they knew why I wasn't saying anything. And they were waiting until I was ready. So I think he probably put two and two together, but they just didn't say anything because I didn't say anything. So it felt good to be able to get that off my chest and not have that weight on my shoulders anymore, because I felt like it was the elephant in the room. Like I couldn't talk about my life with my parents and what I was doing. I felt like I had to be careful what I said because I didn't want them to know that I was at Nic's house. And I'm almost 40 years old. I don't need to answer to my parents anymore, but there's still just that that was beat into me to have respect for your parents. And so like, I don't even swear in front of my parents. Like I am a different person in front of them. So it felt good to finally be able to just let my guard down and let them see the real me and be able to talk about my partner and where I'm spending my time and what I'm doing.
And ever since, she has had more interactions, more invites, more conversation. She's had so much more family time with her parents ever since all of this happened. So her family life has really rocketed up, and in a way that she wasn't expecting. Like her relationship with her parents is so good right now, better than it's been in years.
Yeah, that authenticity really matters. And you know what you're talking about is like your parents, sometimes they just know. My mother, what she did, I was 21. She's like, let's go to the grocery store. And I get in the car and we're going really fast and the windows are rolled up, the doors are locked. And she's like, are you gay? And I can't get out of the car. Like I can't get out. And I'm like, and all I could say was, I don't know. Like, let's just go to the grocery store. But like, there was nothing I did this before social media. I don't know how she would have figured out, but like a parent's instinct, you know, they know. They're just
our conversations. I just did that to my oldest this week. Yeah.
Yeah. So your kids are on board too, Heidi, with all of this, and the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Me coming out 5 years ago, that meant my kids were 10, 8, and 6 at that time. And I mean, they had to process emotions for the divorce side of it. But my oldest, who was only 10, said, well, Mom, I kind of knew you were gay. Yeah.
She looked like this the whole time.
Yeah. Well, have you guys seen Mormon No More, the show on Hulu?
Oh.
What? You haven't watched it? It's 4 episodes. It's very similar to your story. Mormon No More. You need to watch that.
I've seen a lot of ones like that, but
no, watch that one for sure. Hulu.
Okay.
And I wanted to say, I'm saying this as I'm a family law attorney, and so I'm seeing a lot of, marital discord and fighting and all that. And like, I just hope you guys can stay together. And, it seems you've weathered some of the worst storms already, right? In a very young relationship. And so you seem to have just such a good and strong bond and really look out for each other. And I hope you can continue that. And if things, come along that you can't deal with, I'm just a big proponent of therapy. And yes, you said you had maybe some bad run-ins, but what's interesting now is there's so many therapists that aren't restricted by state, that you can find LGBTQ friendly therapists and things that do it virtually. And just to have, you've already put in a lot of work, but to keep doing that, because you guys, I mean, it's really phenomenal what you've done. You're living this rural, I can't even imagine. I feel like I'm in the sticks in Tucson, and it's
oh my gosh,
whatever, a mid-range city. And I feel like I'm like, somehow I got stuck here in this place that's like on the moon. And, I know I grew up in the kind of places you're talking about in very rural Illinois, and very, it was not cool to be gay and all that. And I mean, just, you've done a really incredible job. And I know we only put this stuff out on audio, so people don't see, but, you just have a really good vibe together. You seem to really love each other and care about each other. And a lot of this stuff would really burn people up, and there'd be a lot of jealousy or anger or resentment, and I just hope that you can keep that out,
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning all of that. The vibe is vibing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really obvious you're gay. That's all I'm going to say.
We will have a video clip.
Right?
No, but both of you. That's a real compliment.
It is a compliment.
That's a compliment. Yeah, it is.
So
it is a real compliment. And you guys, the fact that you can, just take that and be happy with yourselves, which you seem to be, and the haters can go fuck off.
Exactly.
Tracy, you have used all of your swear words for every season. We made it through to season 7, and she has not even sworn. And now she's done it twice.
This just burns me up. The subject matter burns me up. We've had a lot of different subject matters, but that kind of hating for no reason. And people can't see this, but I have 2 pride tattoos tattooed on my forearms in the last year. I think I did it.
Oh,
yeah, because you know what? People don't like it. They can go suck it.
I'm sure Apple doesn't like suck it either, but just to clarify.
They can go suck a lemon.
There you go. So Nic and Heidi, we have a lot of people who tune in because they binge our episodes, but they usually sometimes hunt down a particular topic because they're experiencing it right then and they want to be able to consume it. What kinds of I don't know if it was advice, but what kind of thoughts do you have maybe for our listeners about some things that worked for the two of you in your processes of coming out, and how you were able to be a support for each other in that? Because I have a feeling that there's probably listeners that are in my case, I had a really good coming out experience, but I've been with partners who haven't even talked to their family members in 15 years. And so it's I didn't know how to act, and I didn't know what to do. And then on the flip side, people who, my ex-partner who, had the opposite. What does she need to know? So what are some things you might share with our listeners to just say, here's some ways that might help?
So communication has been the biggest thing, raw, raunchy, hard, messy, just all of it. And just be honest. if you're hurting and you need help, just say it hurts and I need help. And a lot of times it'll just be like, I just need to vent. I just need to get out. Like, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to hold me or listen or be a support person as I am yapping through all of this. And then I don't know, like I was in the military and I wasn't in the Marine Corps, but I was stationed with Marines. I was in the Navy, and one of their phrases is like, embrace the suck. So like, just embrace the suck, sit in the suck. And like, you're not going to be able to find a way out unless you sit in it for a minute. You got to figure out your bearings, get your bearings in the mess. And then you can try to make a plan for getting out of the mess. But the communication has been key. Yeah. Absolutely. And we consider ourselves mid-distance. We're not long distance relationship. She's an hour away and we don't live together. So communication is 100% necessary to like make sure that this keeps going in a positive direction.
And not only are you mid-distance, right, but you're also having to navigate the time with your children as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. In businesses, work life. I think the communication, and you are good at knowing what you need. So like saying what you need, like, I just need you to listen, just to piggyback off of that. I think that's key. That's important. It's that easier on me to know what.
And a lot of times that you're like, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know. So I'm just being honest. I don't know. Yeah. Lots of honesty and being willing to sit in the mess and willing to sit, like she's sat in the mess with me. So like, she was willing to get in the mess with me and just sit and kind of patiently wait for a path forward instead of quitting. She didn't quit. So she could have walked out a long time ago and she chose not to.
Communication, you didn't even know because you probably haven't finished our podcast, but that's our thing. It's like communication is the most important thing, right? And like, it's taken me a long time to learn a lot of that, and also to be able to say, yeah, I just want you to listen, or I just want to vent, or I need support, or I need you to be there for me, right? Not have your feelings about it.
Yeah, like I often will say, like, what did you mean by that? Because like I'll hear something and make an assumption, and always double checking, like, what was your intentions with that sentence, or what did you mean? Can you rephrase that? I didn't quite understand. Yeah, all of that falls under that communication umbrella. But
so not jumping to a snotty little conclusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Giving the other person the benefit of the doubt. That's one of our season 1 episodes. Giving the other person the benefit of the doubt that they're not saying. I've just brought that up the other day. Like, why do you assume that what I said was bad? Like, I know, like, you know what I mean? But it's hard sometimes because we are triggered, right? The receiver, the listener is triggered by stuff that they don't even know they're being triggered by until they've already blown up or whatever.
Both have been in relationships that were terrible, like life-alteringly bad. And so like being able to go through all of that and like come out on the other side, like we've both had our own separate healing journeys. We've both gone on our own health journeys. Like we did a lot of work before we got here. So I don't know, it like age plays a part, life is messy until you're like well into your 30s. Like you just don't really get into a groove until now.
Oh, honey, it is messy way into your 50s.
It gets way messier.
It doesn't even get better. I wish I could go back to my 20s. That was like child's play.
Oh my gosh, it is so messy.
Yeah.
But
sorry, listeners, it doesn't get easier.
It doesn't get better. Isn't that the opposite of the whole like LGBTQ thing? It gets better, and now we're like, it doesn't get better.
Well, it gets better as far as coming out, but then it's like the way I look at it is life is just a series of piles of flaming poo, and you need to go from one pile to the next, and you enjoy the little moments in between. But it's like you turn around and whoa, this happened. So to have somebody by your side, to have somebody who has already dealt with these are your issues that you brought up, Nic, are really, really heavy, right? They're heavy issues: sexual assault, coming out, parental hatred. And so kudos to you both, right? You really have shown a lot of maturity, even though you think you're old, you're really not.
So basically what you've learned from this podcast is you're not old and it gets worse. But thanks for being on. Thanks everyone.
You're not old. It's going to get a lot worse. You think you had it rough. Just wait till you see what's coming down the road. But as long as you're together, well, hell,
whatever. Love conquers all.
Exactly.
We're good.
That's right. Boom. Mic drop. Thanks a lot, guys.
Oh my goodness. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, even though this was a really difficult topic to talk about, and want to thank you both for sharing and being vulnerable. The reason that Tracy and I came together to do this podcast is because we wanted to help people, and we wanted to make sure that people felt like you're not alone. There are other people out there that are experiencing what you're experiencing and feeling what you're feeling. And maybe, just maybe, we can inspire people or educate people or just help keep them company when they're feeling down. And you all sharing your stories is a really profound way of being able to help people and our listeners, who we have a ton from Singapore and other countries around the world, but we do have a lot of American listeners too. And people will be tuning in and they will be hearing this, and being inspired and be able to feel your strengths, because as Tracy was saying, she could feel your vibe. I can feel your strength through here. And I hope our listeners can too. So thank you both so much for being on today. And to all of our listeners out there, until our next episode, go out there and rock those relationships. If you liked what you heard, check out our show notes for resources from today's episode. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram under Rock That Relationship, and go to our website at rockthatrelationship.com for updated episodes and more great information.
Thanks for listening. Now go rock those relationships.